I'm going to record. Okay, so good afternoon. I hope that everyone is doing well. I'm just looking at participants trickling in at the moment, but we are going to get started. So for anyone who has come on ECPAT UK online training before, you'll know that we want to make this interactive. And how we do that here at ECPAT is we use something called Mentimeter. So I'm just going to quickly post the Mentimeter instructions in the chat, but I'm also going to explain how it works. So what I would recommend is that you keep your screen on this Zoom call. If you've got a second monitor linked up to your computer, then you can use that. Otherwise, it's just easy enough just to pick up your phone and use your phone. If you go to a web browser, you go to the website menti.com, menti.com. And then after you do that, it's going to ask you for a code. And the code just for this afternoon session is 1694 5012. That's 1694 5012. And once you're logged into that, whenever we have interactive slides, you'll be able to take part. Okay, so if you would like to use that throughout this webinar, please feel free to do so. Okay, so with that, we are going to get going, and we're going to check in how we always start any session we do at ECPAT. So how is everyone feeling this afternoon? Are people feeling good? Are people feeling ready for this topic? Maybe some people will be feeling tired or busy. Great, so what you can see is you guys, as you are logging into Mentimeter and submitting your responses, you can be, you're feeding directly into today's webinar. So it's a really easy way that we can get your views and ideas as well. So people feeling good. Some people maybe had a little bit of time and were able to actually have their lunch before, so they're feeling quite nice and full. Often that means sleepy as well, so maybe we'll lose you in a little bit of time. Other people maybe didn't get a chance to have a bit of lunch before starting today. People feeling interested, people feeling good to go. So with that, let's get going. I'm always really curious where people are joining from. I tend to know who I'm training when I'm delivering our training courses. However, for these webinars, it's a lot more open-ended. So I'd be very curious to see where people are logging in from this afternoon. Okay. Quite a variety so far. Yeah, also seen on the chat. Please feel free to contribute on the chat, just because there are a lot of you, and I'm doing quite a short and sharp session today. Then I probably won't be able to monitor the chat for any questions, I'm afraid. However, please feel free to discuss. So good, we've got quite a variety of people. We're very absent from anyone outside the UK. We're absent of those maybe from Wales and the Southeast, but apart from that, we've got some good representation there. Great. And then the final question I've got is, what kind of professional sphere do you identify with? So it might be local authority safeguarding, law enforcement, the charity sector, health or education. And then maybe I've missed something out as well. So you can submit your responses there. Okay, good. So quite a variety as well. Quite a few third sector, health and education, as well as local authority safeguarding, and a handful of some of those others. Great, great. Got some foster carers, looked after residential staff as well. Wonderful. Okay, so with that, I'm just going to briefly introduce ECPAT, because I know that some people on this call won't be familiar with us. So our name stands for Every Child Protected Against Trafficking. We are part of an international ECPAT network of more than 100 organisations across the world. Here in the UK, we very much focus on the statutory response and supporting the response of child victims of trafficking. Most importantly, we have our youth programme based in London and the South East. If you are practicing in that region and you are working with young people who you suspect trafficking, you can always refer to us. We work with young people from the ages of 15 all the way into their 25 as well. We produce research into issues child victims of trafficking face and into child trafficking. You can go to our website and have a look at that and download all of that. We run campaigns on issues relating to child victims of trafficking. Our campaign at the moment is the Stable Futures campaign. Really, we're focusing on being able to get stable futures for child victims of trafficking, which is so important to protect them, to help them recover, but also to prevent re-trafficking as well. We try and inform policy as much as possible, and then we have a number of different training programs there. So if we're thinking about child trafficking, and we're thinking maybe from our safeguarding perspective, I know a lot of people on the call will be working with young people in a safeguarding context. When we have that first contact, when we're working with a young person and we discover that they've been trafficked, what do we need to be thinking about? So you can be submitting your responses on Mentimeter if you are able to log in. I'll just copy and paste the instructions for anyone who has joined since then. Good, so loads and loads of different things coming in. It's overwhelming, isn't it? We have to think about supporting them with a stable home. We have to think about risks of re-trafficking. We need to think about protecting them. We need to consider risk. Lots of people saying risk. We might need to think about national referral mechanism referrals. We might need to think about strategy meetings with partners. All these kinds of things that we need to go on. And you know, anyone who's social work trained and comes from that sphere, you know the idea about the domain of production. When we're in the zone of getting things done, we're in the zone of processes, protection, and direction. Okay, so often in safeguarding, we are in the domain of production. But actually, when we're in the domain of production, we tend to deprioritize certain things. We tend to think about things like relationship building and getting to know the young person, about building trust. All of these things tend to take a back burner because we're focused on that production domain. We're focused on risk. We're focused on strategy meetings, processes, and so on. However, if we are to effectively safeguard children from trafficking, we really need to move away from that domain of production into the domain of explanation and into the domain of aesthetics, being able to actually understand and build that relationship with that young person. So that's what we're going to focus on today, is thinking about why trust and the trust between you and the young person is so absolutely essential to our work if we are to safeguard them, if we are to protect them, and if we are to help them move on and recover from their trafficking experience. So thinking about trust, why might it be so difficult for a young person who has been trafficked to trust us? So you might need to press refresh on your Mentimeter. But what ideas do people have? Why is it difficult for young people who have been trafficked to trust us professionals? Really good. Loads of stuff coming in. hopefully you're not getting motion sick trying to read the screen as it darts around a bit. But for all of these different reasons, it is so difficult for young people who have experienced trafficking to trust professionals. It might be past experiences with professionals, maybe where they've been let down before. It might be something around culture. It might be around fear, whether that's fear of authority figures. Someone's talked about fear of reprisals. Another person's talked about fear of deportation. For all of these things, a young person might be really terrified. It might be too difficult. It might be too dangerous to trust us. So for all of these reasons, it is so incredibly difficult, okay? And it's really easy for us practitioners to say, go in and speak to that young person and go, don't worry, you're safe now. I'm a doctor, or I'm a social worker, or I'm a police officer, okay? But that is not how it works for young people. So I've just put some highlighted ideas here about why in the context of trafficking it is so difficult for young people to trust us. So first of all, we need to consider those sophisticated methods of control that traffickers have used. They've told the young person all sorts of things about professionals. They've manipulated young people. There's been psychological control there. It might be previous experiences with professionals, whether that's here in the UK or abroad as well. We have to remember that young people are in an incredibly precarious situation when they come into contact with services. Often a young person doesn't have leave to remain in the UK, so they have insecure immigration status. Often a young person has been arrested and might be facing criminal charges, which is related to their trafficking. They might be moved from local authorities, safe accommodation, to a different children's home, to a different foster placement. There is so much insecurity, uncertainty, and precariousness, which might be so difficult there. And then finally, we need to actually reflect on how our statutory processes imitate trafficking. How, from a young person's perspective, the process of coming into care is actually very similar to the process of being trafficked. You're being passed from adult to adult that you've never met before. You're not really getting any sort of explanation about what's going on. All these people might be promising you certain things, okay? That does imitate trafficking, okay? And therefore, a young person going through this process is going to feel unsafe. They're going to be in their survival mode where they're looking out for danger. They might not be feeling safe. And this comes from a research paper looking at unaccompanied young people here in the UK. And I think this is a really good way of putting it, is that Robinson and Segrot said mistrust is a functional aspect of existence. It actually serves a purpose for that young person to mistrust people, okay? It's necessary for their survival. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to play a very short clip, which came from another online event that we did here at ECPAT, where I spoke to one of our youth group members and went into detail with his views and his experiences. And I just have put out a clip now, which talks about issues of trust in the context of trafficking. So I'm just going to play that for you now. You should have sound.
There's something I heard. They said betrayal can be forgiven, but can never be you can never forget it. So if someone betrayed you, so basically when you actually go through that moment where someone you trust betrayed you by trafficking you, it's difficult to trust anyone else because you don't know what the person have in store for you. You don't know what's going to happen next. So you're thinking, if I trust this person, is he not going to do the same thing as well? So it's difficult. It's really difficult. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one. You know,
So what you heard there was just a small clip from that previous event that we did. And what you heard there as well is all available on our website. The whole event is there. So what you heard was a young person talking about, from his point of view, about being betrayed and what is the impact on that. And he talked about in detail how he actually saw his trafficker as a carer, as a trustworthy adult. And then that resulted in exploitation. And that is why it is so difficult to trust other adults in authority figures. He says that you cannot forget betrayal. Here's another quote, and some of you, if you've joined our training before, might recognize it. And this is from another youth group member, and she's talking about her experience. So she said, in my experience in social services and foster care was very difficult. I had some foster carers which were nice, but some I did not like. I had different social workers who told me different things and promised me things that did not happen. I did not know what was going to happen from one day to the next. In my head, I thought I should return back to my madam. I was abused there, but I had managed to survive. Now I was so scared. I can see why young people run away to their trafficker. It is better the devil you know. I can see that some things are improving, but what is most important is that young people are made to feel safe. That is the most important thing. So what you can see from this quotation is the uncertainty, the precariousness, the insecurity that this young person was experiencing. Different workers, some were nice, some she didn't like. Different people coming in, promising her things, and then it didn't happen. She says she did not know what was going to happen from one day to the next. And what impact does that precariousness have on young people who have been trafficked? Young people who have been trafficked are only thinking about their survival. And look what she says in the next part. In my head, I thought I should go back to my madam. Yes, I was abused there, but I had managed to survive. So this is why trust is so important, is because young people need to trust us to keep them safe. And if they do not trust us to keep them safe, they are back to that question of survival. Where are they most likely to survive? And if they don't trust us to keep them safe, then the answer is they're more likely to survive with the trafficker. And that is where the re-trafficking happens. Young people need to be able to trust us to keep them safe. So I have very crudely tried to draw this on a diagram, and there's this idea from Shuker and Pierce talking about the psychology of exploitation. And they talk about how a young person is stuck in the middle. And on one side, they have you, and you might be really warm, really welcoming, really nice, and they want to trust you. But on the other side, they have the trafficker. They have the person exploiting them. And that person is telling lies about what you are or who you are and what you'll do. They might be making promises. They might be making threats. So this young person is stuck in the middle of those two positions, and they're trying to work out where are their chances of survival highest. And when a young person first comes into our care, they're going to be much more likely to trust the trafficker. Okay, they're going to be really bonded in, linked into that trafficker, and they haven't had a chance to see what the trafficker has told them is often untrue about professionals. So this is why it's so important for us to actually be able to build trust. Okay, over time, can we build that trust So at least they trust us a little bit. We might get some disclosures. We might get a bit of understanding. We can show that we're actually here to help them. And if we do this effectively, then we might get into the position where over time, they trust us far more than they trust the trafficker. Okay, and actually the threats of the trafficker, the pull of the trafficker is weakest, where a young person doesn't believe their promises anymore, doesn't feel in danger from their threats. If we build trust with young people, we can get young people to this position when they trust us to keep them safe. And that is when we can stop young people getting re-trafficked. So I think what we need to do is consider what are the common pitfalls and what are the common hurdles which we have to overcome as practitioners to try and get young people to trust us. So what are some of the common mistakes that we think lead to mistrust between practitioners and young people? What ideas do people have? Really good. Loads of ideas coming in then. So I'll try and group some of them. Yeah, so a few people talking about over-promising or not managing expectations, inconsistency of responses, but also inconsistency of staff. Yep, not following through, false promises. Someone said, we ask them to trust us, but we don't trust them back. We need to remember that trust is a two-way street. Absolutely. Unrealistic expectations, changing homes, loads of ideas. Writing everything down, not listening to young people. Absolutely. Making decisions without their consultation, making decisions contrary to what we've said. Yeah, broken promises. Lack of understanding, really good one. Not really understanding the young person's experiences and what they've gone through. Not acting on safety plans, really good. So loads of different ideas coming through. So I'm slowly scrolling down them. Good ideas. So you see how difficult it is for us as practitioners, right? There's so many different mistakes that we could make, and we often will make them, okay? But it's about learning, about knowing how to do it better. So what are the common things that our young people talk to us and say harm trust? So the first and most powerful one, I'm not quite sure if I even saw it on the last slide, is disbelief. How is a young person going to trust you to keep them safe if us as a practitioner doesn't even believe their age or their name or their country of origin or their story? Yeah. So young people say that they just don't understand when they're being age disputed, and when practitioners are saying that they don't believe their story, you know, and then they expect the young person to trust them. But if the young person can't even get the practitioner to believe them, then they're certainly not going to trust them to keep them safe from a trafficker. Some young people feel, have been talked about feeling told off. And this is particularly pertinent in lots of different forms of exploitation, whether it's criminal exploitation, sexual exploitation, and so on. Feeling judged or feeling told off, that can really harm trust between young people and practitioners. Promises unkept that we talked about. This is an interesting one, I think is a really important one. And we need to remember that young people need us to be in control often, because a young person is often out of control. Okay, they don't know where they are. They don't know what's going on. They don't know who you are. They don't know how things work in the UK. They don't know how things work in the criminal justice system or in the asylum process. They need us to know that. So young people have talked about, if their workers also didn't know what was going on, then that affected trust. So young people actually need to be able to trust us to know things. And if they trust us to know what's going on, then they might think, maybe this person can be trusted to keep me safe. And linked into that is understanding the exploitation. And when people do not understand how this exploitation actually works, then that actually affects trust. And I've referenced a really good Children's Society piece of research there looking at children in care who have experienced sexual exploitation. And in this piece of research, the young people said, if a worker said to me, don't do this, don't go missing, don't see that person, don't see that man, they said that that really harmed trust, because it displayed to the young person that that practitioner didn't understand what was going on. Because if they did understand what was going on, they would understand that it's not the child's fault when they go missing. Yeah, so again, we need to understand how trafficking works. Some people said it on the last screen, not listening, really important. And I've just referenced this Lefebvre paper, which looks at trust in context of exploitation with social workers. And he actually says, for young people, listening is more than hearing words. It is also acting in the young person's interest. And we saw someone in the previous slide alluding to that when they said, if we say one thing but do another. If we tell them something, but then they do something else. Inappropriate information sharing has also come up with our young people. Absolutely, we need to be sharing information for safeguarding. But sometimes I think we get too used to information sharing, and we need to actually always reflect, is it actually necessary to share that information? So we need to reflect on that. Are we sharing information appropriately? And are we communicating to young people when information will be shared, who with, and how? And then there's all those other ideas that we put on the last screen. So lots of different challenges for us to try and overcome, lots of places where we could make mistakes, but it's really important that we're aware of what young people are saying is harming trust. So then let's move on to thinking about how we can build trust. So what ideas do people have? What do you find works in building trust with young people? Maybe you've got experience working with young people who've been trafficked. Maybe you've got experience working with different types of exploitation. So you might be able to share that, or it might just be a lot more general. But what ideas do people have? Really good. So I'm going to try and pick out some key ones here without getting too dizzy. People talking about openness and honesty. Absolutely. Being direct with young people is really important. Consistency. I've seen quite a few people talking about taking time to get to know the young person, taking time to spend with them. Being reliable. Does the young person know that when they ring you, you're going to answer? And if you don't answer, you're going to call them back really quickly. Building that relationship, acknowledging mistrust, really good. Saying, I totally understand why you do not trust me. I understand that I need to earn your trust. I am not entitled to your trust. Really good. Good. So I'm just waiting for some of the words not to move around so much, so then I can read a few more, but really good ideas. Excellent. Acting as an advocate, absolutely. Being patient. Importance of relationships. Yeah, and actually going beyond that and actually recognizing that relationships are two-way streets, actually. Okay, and recognizing that young people probably need to know something about us as well. They can't trust people who they don't know anything about. Good ideas. Really good. So someone says being able to build relationships is one of the things I love about the job. Absolutely. Never minimize the importance of it. When you have all those other safeguarding procedures and processes and risk to deal with, it's really easy to think, well, that's the nice stuff that we can do after to get to know them. Okay, but actually I need to focus on this. That's not the mentality we should have, because we need to understand that actually having the young person's trust is essential to safeguarding them. It's not an added bonus. So looking at a bit of research, also speaking to young people, what kinds of things are they saying? So there's this idea of the child-centered approach, which is just encompassing so many things that people have talked about. Being flexible to work with that young person one-to-one. Okay, that's actually really important for young people. Going at the child's pace, being available when they are ready, being patient and not pushing for disclosures and cooperation when it's too soon for the young person. That relationship-based work. Young people say they need to feel genuinely cared for. They need to feel like this is not just a job for you. Now, I know that so many of us, we all genuinely care and are genuinely trying for our young people. The challenge that we have is trying to communicate that. Okay, and trying to show that we're genuinely caring for them. Spending time together, listening, believing, supporting, being able to understand the young person's culture, you know, all those things that we talked about on the last slide. The next thing that we need to do is make sure we actually understand how trafficking and exploitation works. This is actually really, really key for young people. And this is often what's overlooked. People know about the child-centered approach. They know about relationship-based work. They know that they need to be transparent with young people. But young people are saying that we need you to understand what's going on. We need you to understand about trafficking, about exploitation. Young people say that when a worker shows that they have an idea about the young person's experience, what they've gone through, then that builds trust. It shows a level of insight or understanding about what the young person goes through. And then again, they found this piece of research I referenced noted that exploitation workers, so those in specialist teams around trafficking and exploitation, were much more likely to get that trust of young people and much more likely to actually get disclosures and cooperation with young people. Once again, transparency, as we've already said, is really important. We need to be transparent about concerns. So we need to be able to articulate ideas of trafficking in a child-friendly way. We need to be able to explain what's going on. We need to explain how information sharing works. We need to manage expectations. All those things are really important with transparency. So once again, and we're not too long before we finish, I'm just going to share another recording. This time, this is an audio recording, which I'm going to share from a young person. I'm struggling to, my computer's just having a funny 5 minutes here. Give me a moment. So this is a young person talking about what they need from workers, and I've picked this audio clip because he talks about trust.
Good day, everyone,
and why he trusted his social worker. So apologies for the delay, but you should have sound in a moment.
Yeah, I'm here just to talk about different professionals and how they actually work and help us. In my life, according to my own experience, the first time that I encountered the police actually want to arrest me, take me to like a deportation center because I've already used more than the time that I have to be in the country. So, but I have a good professional that actually stood up for me that time and be like, she said, you can't take this guy away because, as you can see, you need to ask them what they actually want. They say that they are young, they are everything. Like, she stood up to actually defend me That's kind of the professionalism we really want in people. Neither you are a police officer, or maybe you are a social worker, a carer, or any field at all. When you see a young person like going to like use it, sometimes the police might not be aware of trafficking, or maybe they might be aware and say like, or maybe they just ignore it and they just want to actually make sure they are treating someone like criminal most of the time. When something like that is actually happen, that's when we need you professionals to actually stand up for us, make us feel like, yeah, we are safe with you. Ever since then, I've almost like every social worker that I have in my life, I've always trusted them because of the first impression of the first social worker that actually helped me the other time, that actually saved me, that actually make me feel comfortable to stay in the country. That's how long way it goes. That means every social worker that I'm going to encounter in my life, I'll always trust them because of the first impression that I got from the first social worker. So that's how it works for we young people. The first impression actually really matters, no matter your professionalism, no matter where you are. We really love your work. We really love everything you're doing for us. But actually, we just need improvement because a whole lot of young people have been convicted because of lack of awareness of some of the professionalism about trafficking. So we really need the professionalism, the professionals to actually work and be a professional for real. Like standing up for young people is part of it, especially if you are a carer, a social worker, a police officer. No matter the field, we young people actually need you. We need you so much, so very much. Your contribution would actually goes a long way in our life. I really give accolades to those people, to those professionals, especially that actually stand up for young people that don't really scared about what the outcome will be, but just want to make sure that young people are actually safe. We really appreciate you. You are actually giving life back to us. We really love you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So that was a young person talking from his point of view about what he needed and what was so good about what a professional did for him. So he talked about what made him trust that social worker. And he said it was when he was in the police station, they came in, they identified that trafficking was a concern, and they stood up for him. That advocacy is so important. Okay, young people who have been trafficked feel totally powerless. They don't understand what's going on. They need someone to come and stand up for them. And now, what was the impact of that? The impact of that, he said, was that he trusted them almost immediately. And every time he came across another social worker, he trusted them because of his experiences with his initial social worker. So when I met this young person and I explained that I was a social worker, he started smiling and saying, "Oh, that's great, that's amazing, welcome." How often do people have that as social workers as the response? So, that shows how powerful it is. And it's really difficult for us to advocate for young people. We might feel intimidated. If we were that person going into that police station, we feel like we wouldn't have that influence. But if we step out and if we stand up for young people and advocate for them, we get their trust. And that is how we can protect them moving on into the future. So when we have trust, we actually get disclosures about trafficking and exploitation. For those of you who have worked with victims of trafficking before, you know that in some circumstances, that is really difficult. It's really difficult to actually work out what's going on because of those methods of control, because of the fear of traffickers. Young people might not be disclosing things very readily to us. It means that if we have the young person's trust, we can work with them as partners in their safeguarding. Okay, safeguarding is not something we're doing to them. It's not about getting secure accommodation orders and putting on curfews and all these kinds of things. But instead, we can work with a young person as a partner in their safeguarding, discussing together safety plans, discussing together plans for the future. Yeah, all these kinds of things are really important and actually contribute to safeguarding. And if we're able to do that, then young people can trust us to keep them safe from their trafficker. In so many cases, we will not be able to completely sever the link between the young person and the trafficker. They might be contacting the young person over Facebook, indirectly through family members or through peer relationships, okay? Now, in that context, they're still in the middle in that scenario we talked about earlier, with the trafficker on one side and the professional on the other. If we get trust in those scenarios, in those contexts, we can actually prevent re-trafficking from occurring. And then finally, if we're thinking about young people recovering from their trafficking experience, if we are to be meaningfully trauma informed, if we are to be trauma responsive in our work, then young people need that trusting, caring relationship, okay? Only relational safety can really be established when a young person trusts us to be able to keep them safe. And that relational safety is really important if young people are actually to recover from their experiences of trafficking. Okay, so we are just a couple of minutes before ending. Now there's lots of you guys, so I'm not sure how well it will go if I try and open it up to questions. But before we do finish, just a few different things from me, just to highlight that we are going to continue doing these practice webinars every couple of months. And actually we might be doing one quite soon as well, so watch out for that. But we do have our ECPAT UK training courses. So if you're an individual practitioner who wants to receive this training, go to our website and you can book on one of our courses. Alternatively, if you want your whole team to be trained, get in contact with me and I can train your entire team. So these are just some of the training courses that we provide. If you're interested in ECPAT UK's work, then you can go to our website. You can look at all of our research, such as the precarious journeys research or the children missing from care research that I've got up on the screen. We also have practitioner resources on our website that might be of interest to you. If you're interested in finding more about ECPAT, then you can go to our website, or alternatively, you can sign up to our e-news. What I'm doing now is I'm just posting a link into the form with just a couple of questions. If you would like me to sign you up to our monthly e-newsletter to get updates about events, about our work, about our training and so on, then you can just let me know on that form if you want me to sign you up. And then the final thing is just to say thank you so much for tuning in for this practice webinar. I hope that you keep up to date with everything that we're doing here at ECPAT, so you can see some of our future events. If you're interested at referring young people to us, then please get in contact as well. So you have my email address there. Please feel free to get in contact with any questions about cases, any information about our youth program or our training program. Please feel free to do so. So I'm going to leave it there for now, just a couple of minutes before we finish. So I know that was a really quick session. I hope that you found it useful. If you have any ideas for topics that you want me to focus on in these practice webinars, please feel free to give me suggestions. But apart from that, I hope you have a good afternoon, and I hope to hear from some of you in the future.